My name is Tatiana Kolavu. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Business Communication and Professional Skills. I had the wonderful opportunity to be part of the task force that created the new Global Foundations Core curriculum.
I'm Gail Fairfield. I'm the Associate Director of the Undergraduate Program at the Kelley School of Business. My area in that role is to work with any curriculum changes, faculty and departments that are making those changes, because we need to be able to look at how changes are going to impact the students and their degree progress and can they graduate in 4 years and those kinds of things. And then I also manage academic advising, so I keep a touch, I guess you would say, on what's going on with students as they're impacted by curriculum.
So now that you know a little bit about the history of how our task force was created and what our charge was and how the design of the Global Foundations Core looks, we want to draw the curtain a little bit and give you the behind the scenes. What were some of the challenges we had? What were some of the theories and ideas behind the way we separated credits and tried to engage the whole student body with this common curriculum? So I guess my first question, if I can lead this, was the common curriculum. How did you see it play out, and how do you remember us sitting through many hours of meetings and processing that?
There were actually many hours of meetings and years of meetings before we even got to our
at least,
even before that, because Indiana University instituted a common curriculum, or a common general education curriculum.
That's right.
Okay, and we had our own general education curriculum here at the Kelley School that was very robust, but when Indiana University instituted their own, it didn't make sense. We couldn't actually do theirs and ours both. Sure. Because if we did, then students would be here 5 years, 6 years, whatever. Wasn't realistic. Wouldn't have worked. So with the institution of the common curriculum, one of the things that happened was that a lot of the courses that we already required at the Kelley School were included in that common curriculum. Mm-hmm. Where before we had required general education separate from those required courses. So now with them merging together, it actually freed up some space. So because of that, we were able to start looking at our whole curriculum revamp with a little bit more flexibility than we would have had even 2 years prior to that.
I remember the endless discussions and the math where at some point I would always refer to Gail as the oracle of the credit hours, because we would get to a certain amount of credit hours that was too many. We'd have to cut back, and the political implications of having a degree that had more hours. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that played out and how we were able to add credits to the curriculum and add value but still persuade all of the faculty that it would be okay?
I'm not sure we ever did persuade all of the faculty.
That's true.
But we did our best. As I say, mainly we made space by switching over. I mean, we had to switch to the common curriculum anyway. By switching to that, we made some space in the degree. I think the difference that happened, and this is where some of the pushback came, was that the space that was made in the degree was primarily going to really end up in junior and senior years after we added the credits that we needed to add. And so there was some, we had to do a lot of sample scenarios, and okay, if this student comes in with this kind of AP credit and that kind of this and this and then whatever, and they want to do a Spanish minor and they want to do this, and can they get it all in? And so there was a lot of proof of the pudding in really demonstrating how students coming from various scenarios, and I think frankly that most faculty didn't look at all those scenarios, but we sort of needed to have them there so that people could see that all different kinds of students would still be able to pursue this degree without being harmed in any way, and in fact they would be enriched. And I think as it's starting to roll out, that's definitely proving to be the case, that students are being able to fit in what they need to do. They're still being able to take their minors, that kind of thing. And we can get to more of that later. But I think that there really had to be a lot of planning. And we had to really demonstrate, I guess I said that already, but we have to demonstrate a lot how this could work in a variety. then there were the people who are more conceptual in the sense of not just wanting to look at, can the credits be fit in, like that, but people who were really thinking about questions like, will this take away from their opportunity to have a richer liberal arts education? We're taking these credits away from because our liberal arts, common general education curriculum has changed. So essentially, are we just taking gen ed credits away and not giving them gen ed credits back? So I think that one of the points that we needed to make, and that I think we did make, was that the global core, while it's business oriented, is about culture. It is about integrating business into what you might think of as the sphere of liberal arts, right? Sure. So instead of just saying, go over there and learn a little bit about India, we were trying to really give them a deep dive into understand India as, culturally, politically, economically, socially, in all these ways. And then how does that apply to business? And to make that, so I really think the global core makes liberal arts relevant to business.
Absolutely.
And for our students, I think that's really important. So that was a point that we really needed to make.
I thought of one thing we haven't talked about. I think when we first designed the program, there was but an influence from the university saying, really, to gain credit or gain experience, you really need to spend at least 3 weeks in country. And we've designed these, would you say, express 10-day trips that are attaching themselves to a class. Initially, I thought we wouldn't cut the, we wouldn't get credit for that, but we said...
We don't get credit. At the university, we get credit in our degree.
Right.
But
I see the students gain so much. The benefit is maybe staying in one location and not trying to fly to 5 different parts of the country, because the students eventually can hail down a cab and get on the metro or know their favorite restaurant in the neighborhood. That's the benefit of them feeling comfortable. But I do think in 10 days, hopefully we'll have a chance to interview some students, then you'll see is they really get it. They feel comfortable and they understand their surroundings.
I think one of the fallout benefits, if you will, is that these students are going in their sophomore year, and going for 10 days is like a taste.
Yeah.
We expect to see and have started to see, even from the people who have gone on these trips before, and they weren't even part of the full rollout yet, that, how cool was that? Now I want to go for a semester. Now I want to go for a summer. So that these short trips actually fuel the students' desire or interest to go and do a longer trip later on.
And give them the confidence. This fall I got an email from a student that had just arrived in Barcelona, and she said, being in Europe again is amazing. It seems familiar to me. If I hadn't been on the Greece trip, I wouldn't have known what to expect on the metro and getting from the airport to the hotel. It's just, you can see their confidence build. They come back and then they're seasoned. By the time they're juniors, they've been to 3 places, and it's pretty remarkable. It's very, very, very rewarding.
I think the other thing that really can't be emphasized too much is that it's quite different than what some people might refer to as sort of academic tourism. It's not, let's just go and party and have a good time, right? We really do expect a lot of them on both prior to the trip, getting ready, on the trip, and then of course their final product that they do afterwards. Really expect a lot of them in terms of showing up to not only be professional, but to really grasp concepts and information relevant to those countries and to business in those countries. So there's a lot of, it's quite different than going on a vacation for 10 days with your family. And in fact, I think that in some ways, when a student goes abroad for a summer or even a semester, it's a lot less intentional than what we're doing in 10 days.
Yeah.
So they may be taking classes while they're abroad, but they're pretty much on their own to travel or not, to see, cultural sites or not. I mean, all of that is really sort of up to them.
Sure.
And, some of them, other than taking their classes, just go hang out with a bunch of other American students and really don't take advantage, even if they're there several months. So in some ways, we pack a lot more into the 10 days because it is a little more scripted.
Sure.
And we sort of ensure that they get these experiences that, they might get by the time they're there a whole semester, they might get all of that, but it isn't as deliberate.
One of the ways that I would say you can combat that stigma of academic tourism, the first year we did the Greek class, their project was in the US. We've stepped it up since then, and this actually is a great recipe for rigor, where they study the country, they study a company, and the company has given them a question or a case, and then they present to the executives of the company when they're in country. That changes the game completely, and it steps up the level of accountability, the way they have to be prepared, the way they have to practice to hear the accent that maybe the CEO may have. They're not used to hearing someone with an accent, so they can answer in the Q&A. We do Q&A sessions through Skype where they can be prepared for the project, and they really, really take it seriously, and you can see how proud they are when they finish these projects. If it's possible, I would encourage any faculty to dive in head first and really challenge the students, because they grow tremendously through doing that.
Yeah.
I remember our goal was mainly to increase the global awareness of our students with the Global Foundation core, and we sat back, and I remember the spreadsheets of comparing us in our degree to 20 other schools, and what is this school doing, and where are they getting their credits, and what prerequisites do they have, and we did so much of that work, but we at the end looked at the flexibility and tried to engage all the students. Our initial plan was to be more rigid than we were. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? So initially we had G202 and D270, and X271 was going to be travel for all. Remember that? When we started thinking, that's
how can we send 1,200 students abroad
in one semester?
Or at least in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. We went through all of that. What we realized is that there are so many students who, for whatever reason, can't go abroad. There are students that are athletes, for example, who can't really leave campus at certain times. There are students who are international students whose visas won't permit them to go to other countries. There are even some students that we wouldn't necessarily want to send abroad because
You've traveled with me,
because they're developing their professionalism. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So perhaps by sophomore year they aren't really quite ready to be ambassadors of our school. So we recognize that if we tried to send everybody abroad, and if we made that the requirement, we would probably end up giving exceptions to 20 to 25% of students. And those exceptions would require a tremendous amount of administrative work, lots of petitioning, lots of arguing. It really felt like better off to say, let's do this and get 80% of the students to want to go and not have to do exceptions. So I think that was one of the main reasons that we decided that it wasn't curricularly, if you will, tenable. At the same time, I think that just the logistics, I mean, we figured out a lot of massive, financial and logistical things, but it was really pretty overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I think that it really turned out better to do what we did, which is that we require a course, and the students can either take the on-campus version,
option,
8 weeks on campus, or they can take the 8 weeks on campus plus travel option. And that, I think, has worked out quite well to give them that choice.
In looking back now, it's been about a year since this all got voted through. Gail, what would you say your fondest memory of the process was? Or, and then maybe I'll answer that too, but I'm thinking possibly what was the most challenging part of the process?
I think that to be honest, I think the most challenging part really had to do with, this is something, since it was curriculum change, faculty all needed to approve. And a lot of the faculty really were not very familiar with the curriculum as it existed. much less with what we wanted to do and why we wanted to do that. So there was a lot of educating that went on, and there were many faculty members who sort of would get hold of one little piece of something without looking at it in the in the big picture, and get very concerned or worried or even excited about some little piece of the change or the plan that we were proposing. So I think that what amazed me was the amount of time it took to really educate faculty about, this is what we have now, this is what we're proposing, this is why we're proposing it, and sort of go through all of that. Getting buy-in, really, I think was the most challenging part of the process. It was very fun to see some faculty, when the light bulb went on, and they went, oh, then we could do, oh, this would be exciting. So that was very fun. The rest of it really was, frankly, very political, and really involved a lot of negotiating with people and educating them as to the benefits of what we were proposing.
I'll say, even though I work in business communication and professional skills, the communication piece was something, because we had rolled up our sleeves and we were into the mix of moving the pieces around and looking at all the possible scenarios. We never really had a strategy of our communication process. So when we thought through the option A, B, or C, everyone wanted to know D, E, and F, and up to Z of all the other ones, and in an effort not to seem as not being transparent, we really had to step back and do much diplomatic communication as we did at the time. I would encourage anyone that is looking to make a curriculum change like that to maybe come up with some systems to update more often, would you say? But when you update more often, the more you communicate, the more you end up having to communicate. So in hindsight, I think we have a marvelous product for the process that we used.
Sure. Yeah, it's very tricky. When to update, how much to update, how to make sure that you have buy-in from, all the constituents, all the stakeholders. I think that one thing that we did do that was a really good part of the process was to have all those, people would ask us for DEF, down to Z, and we actually had it. So we had all the data. We had the comparisons with all the schools, other schools. We had, we could give them numbers this way, that way, spreadsheets this way, that way. And I think that for those analytical thinkers, which there are many at the business school, that was very reassuring.
One of my fondest, or many of my fondest memories had to do with how we divided and conquered as a group. There were 7 of us, and we had little subcommittees, ran many focus groups, because our charge initially was a little different. It was to look at year 3 of the program, but when we looked at year 3, realized that year just could not be the special sauce that fixed everything. So we had to move back and clarify, and that's how the Global Foundations Core sort of developed the way we did it. But I just have formed really close working relationships with everyone on that committee, and I'm glad we retired the committee, and now our students get to reap the benefits.